Now we'll move on to the Module 8 summary. So there are post-arrival responsibilities that is available on the IRCC website that you as sponsors need to be aware of. And we have mentioned this quite a few times before, but I will reiterate it. Be sure you access and read the entire requirements document. And there is a link here on the page to the post-arrival requirements document. By signing the sponsorship application, all sponsors are agreeing to provide non-financial settlement assistance, and that is to be provided for 12 months for private sponsorship of refugees, and for joint assistance sponsorships, that period would be for 24 months. And this is ongoing for the duration of the settlement period, even if the newcomers become financially self-sufficient. And when it comes to the financial support that you're to provide upon arrival, the post-arrival financial support is calculated using the RAP rates. It is not based on the cost tables anymore. So you're to provide startup costs between the arrival date and the end of month number 2. And you're also to provide a monthly amount on a regular schedule each month so the newcomers can know when they can expect to receive it. And funds are to be provided directly to the person who is entitled to receive financial support from the sponsors. So it's important to ensure that any dependent children who are 18 and over receive their own separately calculated funds that are deposited in their own bank account. Cash payments are not recommended since it cannot be tracked. Sponsors are recommended to use traceable methods such as checks or e-transfers. Special allowances are also provided when there are maternity or dietary needs. And as a reminder, RSTP has an online tool for calculating the minimum financial support that you're to provide at the time of arrival. And here's the web address to that web page where the calculator is located. Monitoring and assurance is the way that sponsors ensure that the quality of settlement assistance offered to refugees upon their arrival in Canada is in line with the program requirements. There are a few best practices that you will want to do to ensure you are meeting your responsibilities as it relates to monitoring and assurance. You'll want to meet with the newcomers on a monthly basis to specifically review the budget and ensure that bills are paid, and to ask if they have any health concerns, especially when the newcomers have experienced trauma. There are settlement counselors who can help them cope with trauma. Be sensitive to these situations. In some cultures, it's a taboo subject to speak about mental health or counseling. Some have simply used a phrase, such as asking the person to share the troubles of the heart, or if they can help with what keeps you awake at night. Now, always use an interpreter and ensure they have access to support services, schooling, language classes, and any other specific needs they individually have within the family. Be mindful of volunteer burnout. Remember that you cannot meet the needs of the arrived refugees if your volunteers are going through burnout. A best practice is not to rely on just 1 or 2 people to do everything. Share the responsibilities, and if you have multiple sponsorships, do not rely on the same team members. For sponsorship agreement holders and their constituent groups, create new settlement volunteer teams for every new sponsored family. At least a core group of 5 persons who will be responsible for their settlement activities. When sponsored refugees arrive in Canada as permanent residents, they have the right and freedom to live wherever they choose. However, it is expected that they will reside in the community where their sponsors are located, so they can receive the financial and settlement support available to them through the support of their sponsors. Sometimes, however, the arrived refugees do not show up at their intended destination because they've decided to live somewhere else after their plane lands at the port of entry. This type of occurrence is called self-destining, which typically occurs when refugees have no prior relationship with their sponsors. Other times, secondary migration occurs. This is when a sponsored newcomer decides to move away from the community where their sponsors are located. This is typically because the newcomers want to be closer to family and friends, to ethnic or religious community, finding a place where the cost of living is lower, or having better job prospects. In some cases, however, it may be because there is a conflict with their sponsors. The Immigration and Refugee Protection Act has a provision called residency requirements. This means that the sponsorship group must be located in the community where the arrived refugee is residing. If you recall from your previous readings, it is the responsibility of the sponsors, not the refugees, to make alternate arrangements when residency requirements are no longer being met. When sponsors become aware that the newcomers have self-destined, or when secondary migration occurs, they should inform IRCC immediately. And until such time as when IRCC confirms that a breakdown has occurred, sponsors are responsible to continue to provide financial and settlement assistance in that new community. They will need to recalculate the cost of sponsorship for that new community, which may in fact be higher than in the community where the sponsors are located. And it may even be in a different province. Sponsoring groups must make reasonable efforts to fulfill their obligations, even if the refugee moves to a different location. They can do this by arranging for replacement sponsors in the new community of settlement, or by naming representatives in the new location where the refugees will reside. Keep in mind, however, that with this option, the original sponsors are still legally liable for ensuring that the newcomers' needs are being met. The first few weeks can be very overwhelming for the newcomers, and yet there are certain things that need to be done as soon as possible. After a day or two of rest and recuperation from traveling, sponsors should help them to apply for a social insurance number, and that can be done at the point of entry airport kiosk if it's available. However, if it wasn't available, you will need to help them do this online. You want to verify that the interim federal health, also known as IFH, has been arranged for, as well as the permanent residence card. You'll want to verify that their Canadian address has been provided. You may need to do this online. Do not wait long, however, because after 6 months, they will have to pay for the permanent residence card. Be sure that appointments are set up for them to visit the doctor and dentist. You'll need to assist them in applying for their provincial health card, and you'll want to explain financial support and the budget, help them to open bank accounts, and provide an orientation where they can learn about their rights and responsibilities, how and where to shop for groceries, and how to use public transit. And just a reminder, this post-arrival requirements document should be one of the documents you refer to regularly. When it comes to communicating through an interpreter, settlement agencies can often provide or recommend interpretation services. As a minimum, interpreters should be used during their orientation as it relates to the budget and finances, and when they're learning how to get around, or during conversations about rights and responsibilities, and when they're signing legal documents. Keep in mind, sponsors should not rely on newcomer children to interpret for their parents, especially when it comes to legal matters or explaining their rights. Although sponsoring group members are responsible for ensuring that newcomers have their needs met, part of their role is introducing newcomers to available settlement services. So part of settlement planning is to look into and identify the available settlement services in the area they will reside. Keep in mind that each settlement agency has specific programs and services they can offer based on their funding. So there may be other services available beyond what we will identify here. So a note about language assessments and language training. One SAW with many years of experience has found that a newcomer who has limited language skills may do better on their language assessment if they take it after the first month has passed. Spending time in informal conversations and activities which give them purpose can build their confidence and a sense of empowerment, and the ability to learn the language becomes easier. The newcomers may need time in the first month to heal from trauma as well. So, paying attention to the specific needs and experiences of the family members is very important. English or French as a second language, or the LINK program, which stands for Language Instruction for Newcomers in Canada, are the official courses that can be registered for with the assistance of settlement agencies. They also provide employment counseling, and some agencies even have employment matching programs. The newcomers can get their credentials assessed. This is to see if any of their education or work credentials are recognized in Canada. Some settlement agencies provide child and youth programs to help dependents integrate well, and their education and job skills training, such as using basic computer programs like Outlook, Excel, and Word. They can assist with locating affordable housing and making community connections because they have event-based programs such as friendship circles for newcomer parents. Very important and expected that the arrived refugees will have access to settlement agencies and the free newcomer services they provide. Sponsors even have to name the settlement agencies they intend to use on the settlement plan forms. Sponsors who are interested in being matched with a settlement professional for a specific sponsorship can contact the RSTP Settlement Support Connection team by emailing spokeconnect@rstp.ca. You can also locate settlement services near you by going to the IRCC Newcomer Services website. When it comes to preparing for the end of sponsorship, sponsors should assess the progress that the newcomers are making towards self-sufficiency throughout the sponsorship period. Some benchmarks of self-sufficiency include the ability to conduct day-to-day tasks, such as paying rent, bills, and budgeting, and being able to navigate local transportation, and accessing services in the community, as well as employment, self-employment, and earning sufficient income to cover their own living costs. Be sure you have a transition plan in place where you talk about the settlement year and discuss goals with the newcomers at the onset. Encourage them to surround themselves with a secure and supportive social network apart from their sponsors. It will also be important to discuss survivalist jobs versus dream jobs and talk about the importance of improving language skills so they can pursue their desired career path, and perhaps even consider how they can start their own business. Talking about these things throughout the year of settlement will help to manage expectations of both the newcomers and their sponsors. Explain the end date of financial support. This is important so everyone knows the date when financial support will no longer be provided. Discuss how to access social services, food and furniture banks, etc. If the newcomers are not self-sufficient by the end of the sponsorship, they are entitled to apply for the following services and assistance that will help them to continue their integration process. They are eligible to apply for provincial social assistance, subsidized low-income housing, and further ESL classes. They can also take employment training support, and they can also participate in community activities and social support groups. And finally, don't forget to celebrate the successes. Even small steps towards self-sufficiency and integration is worth championing and can be very motivating. Now, a word about the echo effect. Sponsors can expect that at some point in the settlement year or shortly thereafter, arrived refugees may approach them to ask them to sponsor their family members. This is known as the echo effect. You should consider to gather as a group if you agree to help sponsor their relatives. However, you are not obligated to become sponsors again. The group may instead agree to assist the newcomers to form their own group of 5 and refer them to RSTP for training. It is also a good practice for the sponsors and sponsored persons to get together to evaluate the sponsorship experience. Once the settlement period has completed, consider a variety of questions, such as, what can you do differently next time? Be sure to include the newcomer's feedback. You may be surprised at what they tell you. Ask if there is anything left to do. Have you compiled and saved all of your supporting documents in a secure place in the event IRCC does a case review? Consider what went well and what did not go well. Allow enough time for everyone to respond to these questions. Also consider what you have learned throughout the experience and share your favorite moment or parts of the sponsorship experience. And you may want to discuss with the newcomer and hear from them how their relationship with the sponsors has changed. As always, if you need help, feel free to contact us. For case-specific questions, you can contact the RSTP helpline Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern at the 1-800 number. But for any remaining questions that you may have related to this e-training course, please feel free to contact me at etraining@rstp.ca Monday through Friday, generally between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern.